Here is my full-size trolley from Delta Airlines. It was manufactured in 2015. One of my ideas to help restore this was to polish up this aluminum so it had like a mirror finish. However, it is covered with paint. That's a paint, right? I tried to use my California purple polish on it and it had no effect. So I bought this attachment to go on my electric drill. It's a paint stripper disc and I just did not like it. Trying to get this bit of paint off made me kind of go, oops, you can't get into this dent right here. So it's just kind of a mess. I don't know if you can tell, but there's little little scratches that way. I think what I really need to do is get a paint stripper. How are you gonna strip paint off here but not here? You know? This is the after video of the trim after I stripped it. I figured out that it wasn't paint, it was an anodized coating. To remove the anodized coating, you have to use Easy Off. And unlike most of the videos on YouTube, I can't remove this trim. So I'm taping everything off with a layer of painter's tape. Why painter's tape is a bad idea. Even though I covered the painter's tape with the foil tape, the oven cleaner still managed to soak into the painter's tape, rendering it useless. Perhaps just foil tape and the plastic layer is enough, but the foil tape is really sticky and might be troublesome to remove. In any case, if this happens to you, sandpaper does wonders. Here's a before clip of some of the oven cleaner I failed to rinse off, and here it is after sanding. Sandpaper makes everything better. Back to the video. Stripping worked pretty well on the sides, but on the top, for some reason, it was like really stubborn. This was after an hour of just trying to scrub it off with sandpaper. It's really hard. It looks really scratchy now because I'm not done buffing it out and all that. I'm gonna do the other side so you can see how the process looks like. This is how it looks like before. It just looks really beat up and you can't really scratch these out. You have to strip off the anodized coating and then buff it out. I'm not taking off all the anodized coating because the anodization process actually makes it stronger. Although I'm like, how strong is it with all those like bumps in it? And got my protective gear. After doing this process several times, here are my tips on how to do it effectively. Number 1, spray a thick layer of oven cleaner. Go over twice if needed. Number 2, halfway through, agitate the coating with a brush. Number 3, spray another coating of oven cleaner to restart the reaction. Number 4, scrub it again after the required time. Number 5, wipe down with a wet towel. The coating was stronger on different parts of the trim, so here are my timing recommendations. Note for the top, I actually sprayed it twice after 12-minute intervals. That's because the coating there was the strongest, and if you don't remove all the anodization, you're stuck sanding for an hour. So you're better off leaving the oven cleaner on for longer than for a shorter amount of time. If you leave it on for too long, you risk pitting the aluminum. But sandpaper fixes everything. It's been 30 minutes and I think it's done. When it starts to turn black like this, they say it's burning and you don't want that. So the bottom side should be definitely ready to go. Here's how it looks like now. The bottom part looks a little burnt, but everything else looks okay. It should have a cloudy look to it. The cloudy look is a byproduct of the chemical reaction that occurs with the sodium hydroxide or lye with the aluminum coating, and I can't remember what it was. We're just gonna sand it off and it should look like raw aluminum. Even though I had wiped off and dried the trim, I was still getting oven cleaner on my sandpaper. So here I am removing all the taped down plastic and trying to make sure to wipe off any stray oven cleaner. Once again, don't use painter's tape. And then I continue to sand with 120 grit sandpaper, with the goal being to remove any leftover anodization and the white powdery layer, which I believe is sodium aluminate. I also tried 80 grit sandpaper and it scratched up the surface too much, so stick to 120 at minimum. I think there's some pitting. I think that's pitting. And you could just sand it out. The top part, as I said, has some really tough anodized coating. So you see raw aluminum here and anodized coating here. And I've been trying to sand it and it's just like not budging. I'm gonna try to use a palm sander. I don't think you're supposed to do, but coating is just so tough. I'm gonna try that, see how long this takes. I used the palm sander very briefly. What ended up happening was there was like weird scratches everywhere, like too many scratches, but I think it did help start off breaking down that top layer of anodization. And then, you know, I sanded it more and I took my tiny little sander and I got in there and I'm pretty happy with how it looks now. It's hard to get into the places where there are little divots. Sanding doesn't really work in these tiny little gouges, but it looks a lot better than it did before. I'm really excited for it to have a mirror finish. Finally finished stripping the anodization from the top, and I think it looks great. It's not totally done because I still gotta do more sanding to make it really shiny. I think it looks a lot better than it did before. I'm ready to sand this, get all those scratches out. We started off with 120 sandpaper. I'm gonna move on to the 180, to the 220, and this is 400, and this is 600, and this is 1500. Might not have to do those, but we'll see. We're gonna do that and get this looking nice and shiny. Starting off with 180. 220 grit, 400 grit paper, 600 grit, last one, 1500 grit. When I was doing the 1500 grit, it was leaving these black streaks on the metal. Even when I try to wash it off with water, it didn't come off. So I'm just gonna go over this again with 600 grit and just nix the 1500. I don't think that was really necessary anyways. On the parts that I didn't strip, I went over with 220 grit, and that just kind of got rid of the surface stains. So you're not gonna get rid of any gouges because anodized aluminum is about strong as steel, but you could get rid of some of the dirt. But so far, this is how it looks. You could kind of see my reflection. I think once I polish it, you'll be able to see it. Here is my full-size trolley from Delta Airlines. It was manufactured in You can't see it, but there's a green 2.5-pound plate that's on top of the backing sitting on the trolley. And it was almost enough to polish the trim and the entire inside of the trolley. Here is the before of my trolley.